In this video, I will show you how I quilt raincoat fabric with wadding. I'm making puff jacket and quilting is my first step. So when you're going to quilt fabric with wadding or batting, it's recommended to use rough cutting, which means fabric and wadding pieces should have extra seam allowances along all edges. As you can see, my sleeve piece is bigger than my pattern piece by 2 or 3 centimeters along all edges. Next, we need to transfer stitching lines, quilting lines or stitching lines from the pattern to the fabric. Before I use tailor chalk on any fabric that I'm going to work with, I try it first on a small piece of that fabric, just to make sure that my chalk won't leave any tracing after washing. As you can see, I'm trying a heat erasable pen and a few tailor chalks, including wax chalk. I applied heat using my iron. Before doing that, check your iron settings. And I also washed my fabric just to make sure that there is no residual, no tracing, nothing left after washing. Next step is to transfer quilting lines into the right side of the fabric. To secure the fabric and wadding placement, you can use pins, but pin your fabric exactly into the quilting line. If pin pricks, leave holes in your fabric. I usually pin only my middle line because I will start stitching from that line. As I said, we start stitching from the middle line. No back stitching, just straight stitch. My stitch length is 3.6 millimeters. You can choose between 3.5 to 4 millimeters, and this still will look good. Distribute your fabric evenly, just make sure there is no wrinkles or anything like that. Gently help your machine to move the fabric. You can also use Teflon foot for sewing nylon fabric. It's up to you. At the end of the video, I will show you how you can use interfacing when quilting fabric with wadding or batting. When you finished your first line, middle line, you can move to the next line. It doesn't matter to which side. So when stitching quilting lines, hold the main fabric with a light tension at both sides. At the same time, the wadding needs to be pushed up slightly to form a swelling, if you can say that. So you have a little bit of extra of batting underneath. I'm using pins just to make sure that my top fabric is with a slight, very light tension, and my batting is pushed up slightly. And again, no back stitching, just straight line, straight stitch. So when you finish stitching, you should end up with a bit of extra of wadding underneath between two quilting lines. So when you check the other side, you will see that you have very small bum made of your wadding fabric material. It's not a lot, it's just a little bit of extra. When you finish all your quilting lines, you can adjust the fabric piece to your pattern. So place the pattern on top of fabric piece and match quilting lines. Yeah, just making sure that all your lines are matching with your pattern marks. outline the contour and trim the extra fabric. At this stage, when you adjust your piece to the pattern, you may notice that your quilted fabric piece has changed in size. This is due to quilting process. When you quilt your fabric with batting, your entire piece may shrink. That's why rough cutting is recommended. Before cutting extra seam allowances, I prefer to undo my quilting stitches from the edge to the pattern contour line that I just drew, transfer threads to the wrong side of the fabric and tie knots. That's my personal choice. You don't have to do it. You can simply do a straight stitch with a stitch length 2.5 millimeters to reinforce quilting stitches. When I finish with the tie knots, I trim off the extra fabric along the edges. Next, do a straight stitch along all edges. The stitch length is 5 millimeters. This seam will be removed later on. I stitch approximately 5 to 7 millimeters from the edge. Considering your seam allowance, my seam allowance is 1 centimeter. So I'm stitching 5 millimeters from the edge. I'm cutting threads at edges of the seam that I just made. This will help me to remove the seam later on when needed. I like to use interfacing, light, very light sewn interfacing when I quilt my fabric with batting. So I make a sandwich interfacing batting and fabric, and instead of having wadding on the wrong side of the piece, garment piece, I have interfacing. So interfacing helps your sewing machine to move the fabric along while you're stitching. It also prevents any mess, or at least some mess. When you stitch wadding, it's like it's everywhere. So it's nice to use interfacing for these purposes. I didn't use it this time because I didn't have enough for my garment that I'm sewing.